good riddance. Welcome to the Spire Riffcast, where we'll be discussing all things metal, non-metal, and every point in between. With this podcast, we hope to lift the veil on our world in metal music and dig into some topics we wanted to share with all of you. This will be informal, so please take our content with a grain of salt and a sense of humor. Right now, you're listening to the Riffcast, episode 14. I am guitarist Pat Young, and I'm here with bassist Lawrence Chapone and scary vocals and pretty keyboards Jesse Peacemaker. And we're here to nutshell our time spent on tracking this record. Let's riff. So when I grabbed you guys today, now we only have two microphones. I apologize to the listeners.
Lawrence and I will be passing back and forth.
They're going to be puff passing. So I picked up these guys, and we pulled up to the driveway, and we just figured we were listening to our entire record that we got back from the engineer we sent it off to, as we discussed on the last podcast. When he did work to it and sent it back to us, and we're just kind of making our notes individually to send back to him and polish it up even more. But we only got through a couple of songs, and by the time I got to my house, and then we just figured we'd sit in my driveway and burn gas listening to the entire 57 minutes. That was kind of nice to listen to, finally, you know?
Agreed.
After all this time. And it hasn't really even been that much time. But we had a little mishap at the end of everything, which is good because it's at the end. But did you know that Zach's hard drive, was on the fritz?
I had heard something to that regard. Yes.
Yeah. Because when you do records like this, when you do any kind of recording or whatever, you're taking up a ton of space and a ton of processing power.
Right.
And so again, I'm going to apologize to the listeners because we're doing a kind of a ghetto cast. Where we, I think we're going to edit this in GarageBand because his hard drive's getting looked at. So
it's only appropriate.
As long as you can hear our voices, kind of, then we're good. So yeah, we did our last podcast in September. Basically, over the summer in August, I got married. I came back from my honeymoon and basically went directly to this basement.
Oh, yeah.
And started tracking.
Oh, yeah, you were a hermit.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yep. Zach even more so.
Even more so. Jesus.
But yeah, so I want you to describe your studio process because I haven't heard it from you yet. So I figured I'd kind of cold turkey it, do the whole okay, well, how do you feel about it? After being done with the whole thing, because I know how you get in the studio, and that's why I need to file a restraining order against you to make sure that 2 hours into tracking or 2 minutes into tracking that I'm at least one glass door away from you.
It's not that bad.
How's the process keyboards? That's fine. That's that's a different story. But vocals,
we scheduled the tracking dates for vocals, right? And so those weeks came about, and I was just binging day in and day out on honey and tea, honey water, anything with honey that I could get my hands on, especially the hot tea, and then I went in and just kind of did it, you know what I mean? I think what ended up being frustrating during the whole process was just the repetition, and this is something for any musician who has yet to go into the studio to be aware of, is that you will have to retake your shit a lot to get it. I mean, if you want it perfect, you're gonna have to do it a lot to make sure that you've got it. But yeah, we went in, and we would pick one song for each session.
We did 6 sessions, I think, right?
Yep. We did 6 sessions. We had the extra session that we booked.
Did we do
as well,
7?
right?
Maybe we did 7. Well, I know we did
because we had 6 scheduled sessions.
6
and then,
scheduled. One was supposed to be for another instrument to come in, and any auxiliary percussion or whatever, and then.
And then at the last second, we had to book another session.
Yeah, we had to add on to a day. So it ended up being, that day ended up being, was that the last day? No, we did a full day. I remember doing, like, from, it was Veterans Day. And so I had the day off, so I said, I'll do my, like, singing stuff.
Right.
And so I went in the morning. And then you came in around like 3:30 or 4 o'clock, and then you took it out till the nighttime.
Yeah.
So that was just like for me, that was like more than a 12-hour shift or whatever, you know.
Absolutely. Was that the same day that you recorded? That you did the vocals for the intro?
No. That was I think that was a different day. What ended up happening that day? Now this is like we did all these vocal sessions. Talk about repetition. Like I redid stuff. You come back to it. And these.
Oh yeah.
You got to keep in mind, like you can sound great on stage. You can sound great in your rehearsal space where everything is like dialed into how you are used to hearing it. Even if it's not like high quality or whatever, like you're used to hearing it that way. So you can sound great in your own comfortable environment. But when you go somewhere else. Because we did everything else, like the stringed instruments, anything you can plug direct in, we did. We plugged directly in to the computer essentially, and with the vocals, we actually went to a studio, and so it's not comfortable. I mean, we made it as comfortable as possible. We know the guy, Brett Hoban, great guy, and so it was as comfortable as it could be, but still it's not. It doesn't feel like home. So, like, you put these vocals under a microscope, whether it's singing or screaming, and it is like, really? Like, you're so nitpicky, it's got to be absolutely flawless.
Exactly. Like, when we did scratch vocals for a track called the My Side Bias, which we did here in the practice space. And, like, I walked away from those vocals feeling confident, like, yeah, nailed that. Like, that was great. Like, doing vocals for this record is going to be a breeze, you know? Like, but then you go in to actually do them, you know what I mean? And like, everything has to be, like, perfect. You know, everything's got to be, like, spot on the whole time. Like, you're using a different microphone. You've got different equipment that you're working with.
You got to get a good mix in your headphones.
Exactly. You know, it's all of this, and then there's like the little nuances with like the way that your mouth is moving for a certain word or even a certain half of a certain word. It's really nitpicky, and unless you do that like often, unless you're used to it, it can get frustrating. You know, having the constantly like, oh, well, no, you got to do it again. Like, no, I got to do it again. Like, no, fuck this, let me do it again. And then after a minute, you know, it's like, let me just do it again. No, fuck, I'm done. Just walk out.
Yeah. That's where I'm behind a door.
Yeah, I know. I know.
A lot of it's tough.
It always just takes a couple of deep breaths and then some determination. You come back and get it done. Like, I came back into the studio. I remember leaving the studio twice or 3 times during the recording process, finishing a session, and on the way back home, not feeling good about it.
That's the worst.
Not feeling satisfied with what we had done. Mm-hmm. So the following session, I would come in and literally retrack basically all of the vocals for the session.
You're like, I don't even want to hear it.
Yeah, like...
Yeah. No, that's the worst feeling is when it's like 11:30 at night. You went way beyond the session time, and then you have to get up early in the morning and work. And like with that feeling that like, I'm not happy with that.
However, the vocals when I came back and retracked those couple of songs, those are probably my favorite vocals on the record.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and everything turned out great. It's tough when it feels when things are down to the wire. and it feels rushed,
Yeah.
then you feel like your performance was rushed.
Yes,
You know.
exactly.
But everything was great. And I think it's tough too. Like with everything being under a microscope, like you got to have the good mix in your headphones, and then like if you don't have that good mix, like you can get good takes. You're trying to get into the music because we wrote these songs, like you're writing this meaningful, the
Right.
lyrics in the music. It's like that's what makes it makes the band who it is.
Yeah.
Gives it an identity, and you want to get into that, and you don't want it to just be words on a page when you've like retracted and retracted and retracted. If you're having trouble with a part, because we all
Exactly.
have those parts that are like really really tough for us. But the biggest thing was like rhythm. Like you'd get like all of your emotion into it, and then you'd realize it. Like we'd go in and like we'd listen to our individual takes, and we'd be like, "Oh, great, I was off. Awesome. All right, back in." Like, and everyone's nodding like when you do the part right, and everyone's looking like, "Yeah," giving the corniest thumbs up, and you come in to listen to it, and it's off rhythm. You're like, "Ah."
Even if it's just by a little bit, you're like,
Yeah.
fuck.
There it is. Doesn't matter.
Then it's like some of that initial passion just kind of like there's a fraction of it that just kind of goes away.
Yep.
Every time you have to do that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what ends up leading to, either having to redo it or the best. I mean, we learned quickly to like move on and then come back to it. When you're fresh, like let's move on to another part.
Yeah.
Like this one's tough right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's we did drums and the auxiliary instruments, some of the extra stuff, and vocals in this studio with Brett Hoban. And actually Brett just kind of gave us the reins, and
Yeah.
Zach took well to the program he was using and caught on real quick.
Absolutely.
And
Basically
just
produced
freelanced
this himself.
Yeah, he just freelanced through the studio, really. Brett helped us out a lot, though, which was nice, and he gave us a lot of good input.
I commend that, though. Zach had a lot of sleepless nights for the sake of this record.
Yeah, he did.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. But we still got to find ways to make fun of him. As everybody, we got to make fun of everybody. So we thank him, but also make fun of him for it.
Yeah, you'll think of something.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
He plays the computer. That's what he does in our band. For like 3 months, he played the computer. And when he got all that stuff done, then he realized, I have to track my own guitar. So that was a good feeling for him. These drums are sounding nice, man. I worked really hard just making sure everything is leveled up, and okay, I got to track my own guitar. Cool.
Everything sounds fucking amazing, though. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it does. It really does. We really don't have that far to go with getting it cleaned up.
Yep. There's a few more minor editing notes here and there.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last thing I'll touch on with like vocals is like writing lyrics. We fell into this the same trap we fell into with Discovery. And I don't know if it's a trap, but because it's done and you wouldn't even be able to tell. But
Right.
We did 5 songs, or actually it was 4 songs on Discovery with vocals, and then there was the last song, so the 5th song with vocals. There's that one instrumental.
Yeah.
The 5th song, which ends up being the last song on Discovery,
Which we pieced together. Lyrically and rhythmically, as far as vocals are concerned, in the studio whilst recording vocals.
Yeah, and we never played that one as a band.
Yeah.
That ended up being I would say our crowd favorite, Apply the Mind Beyond. That long song, 7.5 minutes, and ends up being the crowd favorite. And it's funny because it's like we kind of rolling the dice, like you're going off of just songwriting and saying, this, I believe this is going to work, and it thankfully ended up working, and I'm like, that's not going to ever happen again. And weren't you like, didn't you have a cold or something?
Dude,
for that recording
I was
process?
sick for the entire recording process of Discovery.
But I'm basically like, this is one of those moments. Everything that's metal comes from a place that's not metal, and I'll do this little snippet every now and then on the podcast. And that's a perfect example, because I'm sitting there like we had the song mostly written, but there were still lyrics that were not written on that song. And so we had to, like, we would get a line or something that was in my head, and I would call my mom, and I would say, because she's like, you know, very like grammatically correct, and she, you know, she's very well spoken. So I'm like calling her up, like, does this make sense? This line, like, death to all, whatever, like some like brutal line.
Dude,
and
I remember
yeah.
you and I almost got into an argument over one line in Reinvent the Race.
Was it whether to use an S or not?
It was if we should see the progress, then light return to the sun, enveloped in darkness we will become. You and I were having a dispute over whether or not the line was going to be, then light returns to the sun. So yeah, it was
to the sun, then light returns to the sun. Yeah.
I remember
I had to get the input, because it would have been majority rules. I had to get the input from Mommy. I had to call up Mommy.
And you called your girlfriend.
And I had, dude, both moms had to call them. And I had to get the consensus, but that almost
got heated.
Yeah, no, dude, and that's never changed. We've always questioned it. Like, I'll question it right up to you're going to track the line. Right up until we do. And I did the same thing.
Yeah, you
Called
did.
Mommy again. This is becoming like a superstition. I could go about it in different ways, but it's like, you know, how, like football players, you get ready for a game in certain ways. You wear your lucky pair of socks. You wear, you know, like whatever is your lucky rabbit's foot or whatever. You're getting ready for the game, and that's what I do. I'm like gearing up for the album.
You just have to call Bev.
I just have to call Bev and get the input on our lyrics. And now it's just funny, because having her read the lyrics to me is just great. It's just great. What's a brutal line? Like, always cold. Like, it's try to climb to me, an entrapment to fill your tattered shoes with hindsight.
I bid you the very worst on your tumble back down. I dare you. Try to climb to me. Ba, 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 ba. I dare you. I crave you.
I crave you backing down. Thanks, Mom. She's reading it like
fucking funny,
like Morgan Freeman. Oh my gosh.
Oh my.
Really funny listening to my mom read metal lyrics.
Yeah,
but there's no F words in here. I'm like, Mom, there hasn't been F-bombs in here in a long time.
You don't need it.
It's my normal vocabulary. I'm trying to give people a taste of something else, you know? Well, that's good.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so my mother approves.
It's a hell of a process.
Kid tested, mother approved, the new Spire record. But yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so apply. That's what it was. I would like clear it, and I'd be like, "This line's good."
No.
And then I'd have, and then you'd have Then you'd do it.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
That was pretty cool.
And so my whole point is that I'm like, that's never gonna happen again. We're never going to do this again. What happened?
Twice, dude. We. The instrumental on the record.
Yeah,
that was a studio piece together.
That yeah
as well.
But we knew what that was going to be, though. We got an instrumental to close out the record. We know going into it, we're like, okay, this is probably going to be something that like things will come upon recording it. Certain things will come out that we haven't discussed or we hadn't heard yet until you hear it all recorded back, because that's the best way to do it. You study it up with something that you have a decent sound, everything sounds decent, you're able to like come up with, especially on the keyboards, and you came up with some great parts that it was like before Zach even sent it off to be mixed, like days before he sent it off to be mixed, I was like, holy shit, like I didn't even realize that was there. And that was stuff that you added last minute.
Yeah, exactly.
And ended up making the part, you know?
I must have known like 3 parts to that whole song prior to coming in to actually track it.
And that's okay.
You know?
That's okay, man. Because the instrumental isn't like it's not a truly difficult song. We have songs on the record that are just, and we've been playing them for years, and they still take very close practice on them every week to make sure that they're suitable for live performance. And they take a lot of focus. And then when you're up there on stage, they take, you can't really ever get comfortable with certain parts on the record. But the instrumental, it actually has a flow to it. Some of the rhythms are odd, but it's a little bit more laid back.
Right. But just another example of how that happens. Same with vocals for
It's Always Cold Up Here.
Always Cold Up Here.
I don't know if we can release track names, but that's what it's called. We just did.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I can't
Whoops.
really argue with it.
It's Always Cold Up Here.
Yeah, that was a last minute studio thing as far as the vocals are concerned.
Yeah, ends up being the real first true track.
Yeah.
True song on the record. We have an intro, but which also last minute. Everything was like last minute. And I really ended up falling in love with that intro. And
dude,
I had no idea. Like I recorded. We'll get to that in a second. But It's Always Cold Up Here, dude. That song, that first true track on the record, is just insane vocally. Insane, like real like metalcore, like thrash stuff in it.
Right.
A lot of call and answer stuff. Our buddy Cameron Price, who does like Thestrian stuff and was that's the side project with him and Jesse, and he used to drum in our band, and he did some vocal work on it, some call and answer stuff in this like shuffle bridge section in that song. And I've got some singing that's under it. That's like a constant. It's like it just provides like a rhythmic constant, and then it all comes together in the end. And that part, I was just dreading that part for so long, and
it came out incredible.
It came out incredible, but that was the same path that we followed with Apply the Mind Beyond. We did it with that. We were like knee deep in vocal sessions, and I ended up. You guys took liberties writing some lyrics and putting some rhythms down. And I met with Cameron's like, it's just not quite there yet, man. It's almost there. And so I go, okay, we're finishing up with a vocal session. I'll meet at your place after. So I meet with this dude at like midnight. And then what was going to happen, correct me if I'm wrong here, because it's all been a blur. But the next day was Veterans Day.
Right.
So I would go in I had to be up early in the morning I had to be up early in the morning for metal. There you go. Super metal. The best part of waking up is going back to sleep, So I get up, I go to the studio, and I got to do really all of my singing, which I didn't even get to.
Yeah.
But I'm meeting with this dude the night before, it was day of, midnight, after a vocal session, about to go in for singing, and he's got like his porn star bathrobe on, and he's just like, all right, man, what's up? And we're going through the lyrics, and I'm confirming stuff. He's like, oh, I'm feeling shaky about this line or whatever, and we put it together, like right then and there, confirmed it.
Right.
And he was to do it right, and you didn't even get the update with it yet. And it was the next day, I do all of my singing, and then you guys show up, and then you guys lay it down. Like you do your part, right? And then he came in and did his. Was that what it was, or did he do his part first? Because he had the answer.
I want to say I did my part first.
You did yours first as a reference point,
exactly.
And then he came in and did his answer part to you. So it's like a back and forth kind of deal.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. Like you can tell it's a guest vocal. It's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound
he's
like
he's got a distinct voice.
Yeah, and so he's got like this kind of like black metal scream, and it works really well for that part as a different personality in the song, because that's what it is. It is like a yin and yang kind of deal.
Yeah.
So we're happy to have him on it. I'm glad he could do something with it, and make that really the high point of that song.
I think so. That's actually one of my favorite sections in the whole record.
Yeah, it's really cool, but it's going to be a motherfucker to play live.
It's all right, we'll do it.
Yeah.
We got it.
That's what I think about. That's all I think about. I'm like, this is beautiful. Then I get done with it and I go, shit, this is going to be fun. Oh, because my guitar part's super easy during that. And then the intro. So the intro, talk about last minute shit, like all this stuff. This record, I gotta be honest. Please believe me when I say that this record was not a last minute record by any means. This was over
6 years of material.
I mean, we were writing it when Discovery was being finished. We were writing this record.
Yeah.
The Star Cycle was the first song we wrote. Ends up being the summary with kind of like a cosmic twist to it for the whole record, and that was written first. Then it was like My Side Bias and Finding Up. And we were writing all this stuff with Mike Elliott.
But some of this stuff did come at the very last minute.
Yeah.
Some of it. That intro? That whole composition.
The intro did it. So you and Zach collaborated on that.
Mm-hmm.
Zach had a lot of good ideas for it. And then when, he does like the MIDI keyboard or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when you came in to do it, and you're starting the record. Like, this just sounds insane. You're just like, oh man, I've been working on it. I don't know. Like, there was some question marks to it. But you're like, I got some ideas. This is good.
Well, most of what I did for that intro was stream of consciousness off the cuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he did. And he just recorded you. He just pressed record and said, do it a few times. And you just like did different things. Yeah. So the intro to our record ends up being like an improvised piece with like basically like the key you're in as a guideline to what Zach plays, because Zach then comes in with guitar. So it's just, it layers in. And there's a vocal part that Zach had. He did his like Southern rock, rockabilly kind of voice as the idea, as the pitch to us for the intro.
Yeah.
And then I came in and I did the singing part for it, and I still had to actually write it. I had to write something along the lines of it, and I had to do it at after. Jesus, when did that session start?
That was
3 o'clock.
We had recorded. I came in because you and Zach had been recording.
This was the last session.
Yeah, you and Zach had been recording for a few hours prior to me actually getting there.
Yeah.
And then I came in, laid down my vocals with Cameron, and then proceeded to learn with you and track the rest of Always Cold.
Yep.
And then once that was done at like fucking 9-something at night,
then a whole new chapter of it.
We had to go back and track Finding Up.
Yeah.
That whole song. So I got done with that at like 1. Like 1 o'clock
in the
late. Morning.
Was it really that late?
It was really that late, because then
I had to do singing.
Went in. You didn't get done singing
because I didn't finish singing
until like
before.
6 o'clock in the morning.
6 o'clock in the morning. I was singing the introduction to our record, which is only like 4 lines, but
which are my favorite clean vocals on the entire record. They're
ridiculously hard lines to sing.
Yeah,
they take a lot of lung power, and I'm 5:30 a.m. lung power right now,
and it's incredibly
after like a 15-hour shift doing vocals.
Yeah,
that's what it was. It was a 15-hour vocal shift. Let me just check to see if we're still recording on here.
I was falling asleep. I was falling asleep in the studio, like trying, man. I remember Zach kept turning around and looking at me for confirmation for shit, and I'm back there with like one eye half cocked open, barely knowing what he's talking about.
You look like a bloodhound. You're back there like, it sounds good. You're like Droopy the dog. It sounds beautiful. It makes me so happy.
I almost crashed on the floor.
Yeah. Using like sheet music as a sleeping bag.
I should have, man.
Oh my God,
nuts,
the stories, dude. So that's those are how we do vocals, and we're gonna continue to really, really hash out like 6 songs on the record, and just like at the edge of our seat, like 3 or 4 of them. It's working. It really is working.
Yeah, shit.
We're a little bit crazier every time, but it's working.
I mean, so far, yeah. So far, so
there was
good.
A lot more honey in this tradition. A lot more honey in tea.
Dude, I literally was feeling the honey and the tea physically affect me in the negative way.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think that you could have too much honey water.
Too much anything
Too
is a
much
bad
tea,
thing, I
like-
guess.
That was awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, vocal tracking.
And I stopped smoking cigarettes. I was smoking cigarettes for a little while there, which was the dumbest thing ever. But I was like, just super stressed out. I don't know. Excuses, right?
Oh,
but once I
got
stopped,
married.
yeah, I got married.
Yeah, shit.
But I stopped and like I went to the shit I'm ashamed of. I hate that whole culture, vape culture, bro. I hate it so much. I really hate it. But 5 days later, I felt way better. Lungs came back.
Right.
I had lost a couple of notes there for a little bit.
Yeah.
Stamina and everything was just down. And then in like 5 days, it all came back, and it had to. I'm like, dude, it has to come back.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be a miserable bastard like doing this whole thing, so I switched to that stuff. Did like Google machine research and was like, all right, I'm going to do it,
Yeah.
I walked in there
Yeah.
and they're just like, I'm like, is there anything wrong with this? They're like, no. I'm like, cool. Here's research. Sweet. I believe everything that you're telling me right now.
That's very wise.
Yeah. So vocals.
Yeah, vocals. That's a hell of a process.
It is. But vocals are what make people continue to listen to a band or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've heard a million bands out there where I'm just like, I like the music. That's where people are the pickiest, even non-musicians. That's where people are the pickiest.
Well, especially non-musicians.
It's very simple. If what you're hearing doesn't sound good to you, then that's it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many amazing musicians you have accompanying it. If it's not where it should be, and a lot of it is subjective. You want it to be the best that you can be, and then have it be like a preference between people. I'm okay with that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if something's bad, something's bad. And I think everything on this record, I mean, just hearing it in our car an hour ago, I mean, especially the vocals, dude. Like, everything else is great, but just hearing the vocals, man. Because all we were listening to were rough mixes, and we get this thing back for what we're paying for, and it's like, wow.
I think it sounds really good.
This is legit, man.
Kudos to Jamie King.
Jamie King. Bit Bam. Jamie King.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm gonna rock a piss if you guys wanna make the change over here.
Yeah, that's cool. I was actually gonna do the same thing.
Oh, cool. We can do it together.
Yeah.
All right. All right, we've switched. Tag team. It's Lawrence time now. So we've been saying recording the last 3 months, September, October, and November. We've been saying that, but it's really been the whole process had started at the beginning of the year, really. The real heavy-hitting process started at the beginning of the year. Obviously, we've been writing for the last 5 years, but that's really when we've been hitting the books with it and really studying up on it. And I've been meeting with you at least once a week if we can, and getting, just hitting it hard. Make it, because I need it. That's the only way that I'm going to actually, with how busy I am with everything, and you've got school,
Yeah, both of us.
Yeah, so, like, that's the only way that it's going to get done, is if I say, I'm coming to your house this day for like 3 hours so that
And we get it done.
we can get it done. And that's the way it's got to be.
That's what's up.
But I just wanted to ask you, because I was talking to Jesse about the vocal experience, and we got a little taste of like how we do things in the studio. But a lot of this stuff, like your instrument was tracked direct. It was in. I mean, you went through like the pod, my pod or whatever, and went right into there.
Yeah, that was, believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was mostly to hear back.
Just to hear back, yeah.
And to put the effects on some of the spots of the album where I was used to putting some reverb on my bass,
Right.
so I could actually
So
hear
we have
it.
a reference point
Yeah,
of
so
what
I could actually play to how I'm normally hearing it. But the pod really didn't do much besides...
You didn't use the actual modeling in it. You just used it as like a playback for effects.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff with Jamie is that Jamie has this nice studio, and this is what I was going to ask you is like the perks of not using a professional studio, and we still kind of are, but like when people think we're going into the studio, it's really just an expression now.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really go into the studio with the stringed instruments and with the keyboard, and we do it all wherever we can, wherever our equipment is to get it done. I don't even use an amp. I use an amp as a monitor. There's feedback on our album, and that's due to me actually using my cabinet as a monitor, and I walk up to my cabinet and I manipulate the distortion just as you would a live show. And those artifacts on there of feedback, that magnetism actually stays in the direct in track. And the direct in track is just the dry signal. So it just sounds like somebody doinking around on an electric guitar that's not even plugged in.
Doinking.
It's just doinking. Yeah, it's a word now. That was the only word. I was very comfortable using that word. Yes, it's a word.
We're keeping that. Putting the Spire dick.
Doinking. But so that's what I use as a monitor, and that's how I recorded my feedback. But Jamie reamps stuff, and he puts it through, like, this is us. Basically, if I can provide a visual, we drove down to North Carolina to the Basement Studios. That's where he records. That's where he does his job. And we got all our stuff out. We plugged into his really nice equipment, and we did first takes of everything on our record perfectly. Just all in one take, which never happens. We do it all in one take, and we call it a day, and we say, see you, man, and we drive back to New York. We're basically doing that by mailing our hard drive down to North Carolina with all of our tracks on it, and there's dry guitar. We have good tones. We have great tones. Dave Reed helped us out with some great tones that we were happy with, but this guy has so much stuff there that you're cutting a lot of the cost of actually being a person in that studio tracking and saving a lot of time for you and for the engineer himself to just reamp, take that dry signal, and put it right through another amp. So your performance is still there. He mics it up. He makes it sound all nice with these amps that we could never afford. But like he just takes your performance to another level. It's already there. Your performance is there. You already did it. And that's the greatest part. This is like a new age of technology here.
It's really what made it possible.
Yeah, and same thing that happened with bass. But so I would say that's a perk of not using like one of our local studios. Is there anything like any other perks that you can think of going through your bass process and tracking that like is different than going into a professional studio?
I mean, that definitely sums it up, but it's not limited to, obviously, like, taking those takes, like you just said, if you walked in there perfectly and did it, that really wouldn't have been possible. Like, there's so many tiny nuances to this album that we want to really make perfect, every tiny little fill or inflection, because we're Spire, so everything's under a microscope, especially when it's under a microscope. Then we have, like, a 2X looking in on it. So I don't think that some of the decisions that we made could have like been possible. Some of the artistic choices and styles that we use really would have been possible if we were limited to walking into a studio and getting it done. We were in our band space with our guitar player producing it. So like obviously our bandmate and our friend, Zach. So like having that kind of like, yeah, the comfort zone and the
engineer knew what he wanted because it has to do with him.
Yeah.
It's his project too. Yeah, exactly.
And really, for the way our lives are, like we're not a band who is on a Roadrunner label where this is the only thing that we do. We all kind of do our thing. So like I haven't even seen Mike I didn't see him throughout the entire recording
Isn't that
process.
crazy,
And
dude?
It's nuts because
Feels like we're meeting each other again
Yeah.
when we actually start
Yeah.
rehearsing.
it's like I saw him before we record the album. I saw him afterwards, but the entire time in between that, and really our process made that possible. Us taking our own time to get things done, laying it down in that kind of proper way, making sure that they're right and micromanaging everything and really making sure everything is good. That wouldn't have been possible if we, just walked into a studio, like for our first couple records, walking into Subcat, little like teenagers, like, we're going to record a record. That really wouldn't have happened that way. I don't think we would be as comfortable with it, and I don't think we would
Comfort level is like 90% of it.
Yeah, we wouldn't have gotten the performance, and we wouldn't have been able to really refine some of the things that happened. Because, like...
time is that other thing, too.
Yeah, you could walk into a studio thinking, like, oh, yeah, this part's right, all these notes are right, and then you actually, like, hear it back, and then you... like, everyone's focusing in on it and listening to it, and you're like, oh, these were right, but this kind of needs to happen. These kind of feelings need to happen. Those last-minute decisions, sometimes you need to walk away from that recording process and work on them and then come back to it.
And with a pro studio, you can't always walk away.
No.
You're like, dude, we're on the clock.
Yeah, you walk
That's
in
the
and
day
do
we
it.
have.
Yeah. Zach really, like, he made this album possible with just the way we did everything. I'm sure, like, if we got some kind of record deal, well, for all the hours that everyone put into it, $30,000 plus around, like, it'd be so much money to actually do every
like 50
tiny little
grand.
take.
It's like, dude, it's like at least like 50 grand to make like a legitimate metal record, like at least.
Yeah, with every tiny like personal mistake. Sometimes it's not even like the person knowing the material. It's the person like actually hitting the string in that way. It's like, oh, I screwed up. Oh, I screwed up. But every time you screw up, that's money out the window, and that's really what we avoided with this.
Right. And and it's not like it's not that you played it, it's how you played it too. Like Jesse's talking about the voice. I mean, the vocals are like so hyper picky because you're like moving, you move your mouth in a way that's unnatural. Just as you hold your pick a different way, or you choose to, with the bass, you choose to pluck, like finger pick, and there's different ways, like where you play it on the actual bass itself, where you're playing it on the instrument.
Absolutely,
and
every
that changes up, and it's like, well, I never did that before, but wait a second, when you this is different, this is recording, and that's like usually that's what we cop out with, is we say, but this is recording, and you listen back to it, it's like, oh. Well, this sucks. I was doing it this way the whole time, and it was fine. But
yeah, most especially, like, I know there's parts where I had to almost hold back and kind of mute my strings a little bit in order to get the performance out of it. But that wouldn't come out in that section if I did that on stage, because on stage I need to like really dig into these notes. But in a recording process, so. There's that light too, it's not always the the actual performance that's happening. It's the inflections of things.
Yeah, with guitar, it's with we use like in a lot of intensive technical work that we do with soloing, or if it's like a sweep arpeggio or yeah, exactly. That's sweeping, guys. So next time you pick up a broom, if it doesn't go woo, you're doing it wrong. For that, we would do. You put the guitar players know this. Like you put the sock over it, or the armband. I have an armband. It's a Foo Fighters one, so I have to like turn it over. I love Foo Fighters, but it's so lame to have FF on an armband when I'm up on stage. So I turn that over, and you use the armband to actually put it up on the fretboard, and you do your sweep pattern, and it mutes it helps those strings that would have been rattling due to like you play a couple of strings and then those strings are exposed to all of the other extra notes and
noises,
artificial
yeah.
harmonics that come with scraping down your fretboard, and so that cleans it up. It's not cheating. That's how you do it in recording. That's how you record. Like that's how it goes to make it work.
I actually recorded pretty much the whole record with the same Foo Fighters on my. Like I remember, like Zach and I were sitting there, like, oh, these little, especially like the first majority of the record when my intonation was a little different on my bass, and that was messing with me just as a player. But it was a lot more string noises were coming through. I remember Zach and I looking over at your guitar like, all right, and I just grabbed the armband, lifted up
there
off
it
your
is.
headstock, and I use that for pretty much everything.
Foo Fighters.
Yeah, I think if we didn't use it, it's just because like we started recording and we didn't think to put it on yet, and then we were like, oh yeah.
Yeah, no, it happens. Like this stuff happens all the time where you're just like, this is the way to get it done. There's a lot of strange techniques that people use. Like if you heard, we talked about the guitar, but like if you heard some of the stuff, I have footage of it too. If you heard some of my vocals, like if you watched me sing some of those vocals, and there are a lot of like background stuff. When you layer harmonies, if you're layering it organically, as in you're actually singing, it's not like a harmonizer or whatever. Like if you're actually singing them, it is like the most just boring, one-dimensional way about it. Like you're moving your jaw in a weird way. You got your head down. If it's like a really low part, you're singing. It seems very unorthodox, but like I have no classical training, but that's how I know to like voice build. When I'm doing those harmonies, it seems to be better. Like it really fills it out. It's like a block of sound. It's this wall. And then you have your main line, the line that's prominent. That's the line people are going to hear. So that's what you want to milk. And that's the same thing with guitar. Like those lead lines, if you do background stuff, you want it to work in harmony, so you're not going to be crazy about it. But when you have lead lines, you milk the hell out of them. There's a lot of like lot of bends and squeals, and there's a lot of lemon in it. So it's the end justifies the means, really, for recording.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
as long as you're like maintaining the integrity of the process, then this is the environment that we saw best fit for preserving that integrity, is saying like, well, let's just cut out a lot of the middlemen on this. And and it's nothing against local studios, but like a lot of the metal, the metal that we're playing is very difficult for us. Each member has our own difficulties in certain songs and certain sections, that if one thing, it's like predicting the weather, if one little thing is not right, whether it's placement of instrument, like with the drum kit, or where you're doing it, or how you've taken care of your own body leading up to it, like it's crazy, man. It really is crazy. Everything, you have to eliminate a lot of those pitfalls that can happen, and it all starts with like playing in a comfortable setting, because there's a domino effect. That leads to like a lot of problems if you're not following that pattern. And people work differently. Some people are they're like inhuman, and they can adjust to any environment and just throw it down and be sick. And it's just like, I envy you, man. But this is where we're at, and we know that we have an album that we're proud of to get out to people. So we want to get it out in the most comfortable way possible for as little chunk of change as we can, because that's a huge thing, man. Like those studios charge hourly. Local studios, it's like
the cost for the record compared to what we're gonna get already with what we already have before the final revisions, the mastering happen. Just the quality would not have been possible any other way we did it, and it's almost a joke. Like how much, like our biggest cost was the engineer, and honestly, like his name is worth the cost alone.
This is just like tracking
Yeah,
costs,
let
right?
alone
This
his
is
like
just
work.
for the tracking is like
Yeah. Oh yeah, before any kind of printing or anything
Yeah.
like that. That's a completely
Right.
like to actually make the music, and for what we have, it's almost nothing. Like the majority of it went towards the engineer.
right. Yeah, and this next stage of the game, once tracking is done, I mean, we got to make sure that we do our job. So we're pulling our hair out, like biting our nails, making sure we do our jobs right.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it's sent off, like, then it's just like, all right, I'm feeling a little bit better about it, but you're still like anxious, you know, to get that thing back.
Then we played the show right after we got done recording, so that was like, oh, hi guys, especially for me. I'm like, oh, hi Mike, how you been this past
one
half
rehearsal,
a year?
one. We had one full band rehearsal, and then the next day it was Thanksgiving, and the next day it was Black Friday, which was the show we were playing. And we headlined that one, so.
Yep. So we had.
And we've been trying for so long to get like more than 30-minute sets.
We finally had one.
And then we finally have one, but I'm like, fuck, we have more than a 30-minute set. Because I was like, we'll probably get like 40 minutes. I'm hoping. And Dixon was like, can you do an hour? I'm like, oh. I'm like, I don't want to sound disappointed right now. I'm so happy for this. But we were just tracking for the last 3 months. So we had to, in one rehearsal, we had to quickly adjust and meet all of our band members for the first time again and make sure we can all play our shit, which thankfully we're all adults now. Diapers are off. We can play our shit still, so that's good.
Pat still wears diapers.
I'm still wearing diapers, but that's for other reasons. So what else do I want to touch on with that? It was just the last thing about the professional studio is that with a professional studio they have a lot of candy in there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of equipment, and there's endless potential. And and again, nothing against like the local studios, but it just scares me to think about like doing like a heavy metal, like a technical metal record in a studio like that, because with not being comfortable, you know, like you can get this incredibly captured sound of what you're doing. So now your sound, because there's a lot of candy and they're bringing out your instrument. If they do this with 5 people, you've now brought out all of these instruments, you know, into the forefront, and you're right in somebody's head with your performance. And if your performance was on the clock and it's at like 70-75%, they're amplifying the flaws. They're amplifying the lack of potential in your music. And so that's what I've found out, because I've heard a lot of great bands that do that they go to the studio, and what comes out of it, I mean, it's a compliment to them when I say, dude, your live performance like is crazy. It's like so far beyond like the recording, and like that's what I would want to hear anyways, that like your live performance, because nobody wants, that means you're faking it. If your recording is better than your live performance, then it's like something's going on here, you know. So integrity preserved. You definitely want to match your recording, but there's a lot of bands that just go so far beyond the recording, and I could tell. It's like, I know there's like a lot of mistakes, there's a lot of like just bad sounds, maybe the singer's off a little bit, but I know that person can do it. Just as I know that I would be able to do it, but I would, and we have evidence of that. You know, we have CDs that I don't regret them, like they've helped us grow as musicians, and it's helped our decision making for where we are now. But like, I hear them and I'm like, oh my God, like it's the same thing. It's the same thing that when I hear bands pump them out, like that it reminds me of like those records that we had where there's endless potential in them, and they're not. It's what's captured is not like what it was supposed to be.
Yeah. It's almost like, I think you can hear the uncomfortability sometimes when you hear a perfect record that has perfect sound or whatever, but like that musician, that vocalist or that guitar player or whatever, like, yes, the part's right and they hit it accurately and
Yeah.
it's rhythmically correct, but there's no like, there's almost like no feeling to it sometimes, and
Right.
that comes out like overall, really. Like, I think that made a big difference. That made the world of difference to us because there was nothing on this record that was okay. That's good enough. There was a lot of that's awesome. It could be better. Like
Yeah.
the feeling wasn't there. There's a few points where I was playing and I played it right. I played it correctly.
Yeah.
But we may have used a take I did before or a take I did after it.
It's not what you play,
because
it's how you play it. That's
Because
exactly it.
I felt it more, you know. And us really working with ourselves and not working with that kind of studio setting is really what made that possible, because we all knew what we wanted out of it.
Yeah.
It's not like someone was trying to guess, you know.
Yeah. Some of Jesse's best vocal takes is when he was pissed at me. Fucking crushing it on the mic, being like, "Ew, how was that?" Well, your rhythms were... Oh, it's just that one. Everything was good, but there's that one. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Fuck it. Let's do it again.
That's like after the 10th to 15th time of repeating the same 3-word phrase. when I thought the
Which is
second
fuck
or
you,
third
Pat,
time
right?
around- yeah, that's what it became after a while.
I remember there's one point where I was recording, and I was just ever so slightly off rhythmically from what I was hitting, the actual melody. And Zach and I are working on it, and I'm just like, just the slightest hair off, right? And all of a sudden, we stop playing, the music turns off for a second, and I hear Pat upstairs in his living room while playing Scrabble with his wife, and Pat is like humming exactly what I should be playing. And at that moment, I just stared off to abyss. I was like, because that's helping. That is helping so much right now. That, like, almost put my bass down and walked upstairs.
I didn't want to come down there, man. You were in the zone. You were like, just try. It was just get it done. Because that was at the end of your recording leg.
That must have been the last couple songs.
Everything.
Yeah.
Here's what's great though is that with everybody, no one sailed smoothly through this recording process. That makes me feel good. Everybody, like, and that's a good thing though. Like, it means that like everyone put like all of themselves into the recording. So by the end of the whole process for their individual contribution, they had like nothing left. Nothing physically or mentally left.
Yep.
It was just like, is it done? I see a lot of check boxes. It's done, right? So, yep, we're all done, I guess. Okay. I don't want to see you for like 3 days. Thank you. But yeah.
Yeah, I was feeling like a crappy musician, kind of like hating myself and just hating everything about just my playing and myself. And then I realized, I was like, oh yeah, we've been recording for 3 months. That's probably why. But then, of course, I'm still feeling terrible about myself at that point. And then I was talking to Zach, and he mentioned that really everyone had not only been pushed to their mental limit, but to a physical limit as well.
Yeah.
It's not just like, wow, this is a lot for my brain to handle. Physically, everyone on their own instrument was really strung out. All puns intended.
That's what it is. You're definitely strung out. Yeah, strung out. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, totally. It's weird. It's like you feel like you went to the gym and you worked out, and you're like, because your body feels like it's been like had so much force on it this entire time, and you realize I was just sitting here and playing my instrument for like 4 hours straight,
6 hours straight,
or 6 hours straight, or 15 hours straight. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very crazy experience, but we'll get into closing up here, because because I got to go to trivia night and figure out I know nothing. But yes, we talked about the studio. Yeah, so as far as the record goes, I don't want to give away too much, which I already did. But we have a lot of fun things on this record, man. We got like auxiliary percussion, we got shakers, I'm gonna like Billy Fusil. We got shakers, we got tambourine, we got congos, we got banjo. Yeah, we have banjo, and Zach's like, yeah, that was a priority. That's how Zach. This was when Zach was going crazy with all the editing and everything and recording us, because he had to be there for all of it. When any of us recorded, he had to be there for all of it. He's like, I gotta get a banjo. I gotta get my hands on a banjo. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? He's like, I gotta get a banjo. Gotta get one soon. I gotta get a banjo. I'm like, okay. And so it was for this one section in a song, and I'm just like, okay. And he's like, oh, it's just subtle though. It's just subtle. Just gotta get a banjo. It's gonna be subtle. It's gonna be great. I'm like, okay, cool. And then he got a banjo, and I'd never heard the part, but it makes perfect sense, and it's a great voice in this section. This bridge ends up having like, I don't even know how many voices in it, 10 different voices. And there's also saxophone on the record, performed by my wife's brother, Kevin Spencer. Bravo. Yeah, he did a wonderful job. And then there's a pinch of acoustic guitar in there too, played by Zach. So there's a lot of stuff. We had to put acoustic guitar in there. We're not Opeth, but we got to put at least just a modicum of acoustic. It's got to be in there. The lute. Yeah, don't tell Zach. He's like, I gotta get a lute. There's gonna be a lute in this song. Okay. So we got in closing here. We're gonna do like a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter. And the time frame is looking like January, sometime in January, and it's going to go on for 30 days. And for all you guys, we'll have incentives based on like your donations. There's different tiers, there's different price points or whatever, what you get and, for what you donate. And we've been pitching around some merchandise options, and there are things that we haven't done yet, which is exciting. Our drummer wants thongs, and we'll never do that. Sorry, guys, because that's who's gonna buy it. I'll say never. I will say never. But is there anything you wanted to add, Lawrence, before I do the show update? In closing, I kind of took over the end.
Oh, shit's been sick. It's very proud to be part of a record that really put everyone to their edge, creative-wise and physical-wise. And really everyone put so much into this, especially Zach. As you said, he was there for every second of it. He had to be. So this was a very long and strenuous process for all of us, and I think it's turning out to be very worth it.
Yeah.
And fantastic.
Yeah, it's all coming together now, which is great. As far as our show update goes, I am gonna release the date. I'm gonna say the date because we do have it booked. It's our release date for this album until something changes, unless something changes, but I'm sure it's not. Saturday, March 19th at the Lost Horizon, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. So thank you, Lawrence and Jesse. You guys haven't been on the podcast in a while, and we haven't done one in a long while.
Been recording.
But so thank you guys for being on it and sharing your thoughts on everything. And
thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So music and merch can be purchased at spiremetal.bandcamp.com. That's like our single passive progressive discovery. You can get on there digital, and any of our current merchandise that we have. That isn't going to be part of our Kickstarter. That's all going to be new stuff. So that is the Riffcast. Questions or comments, please email us at spirenymetal@gmail.com. For bonus material from these conversations and more updates on what we have going on, you can join our mailing list by going to spire.fanbridge.com. Thanks for listening. Happy holidays, and see you.